connect button. It's preparing a live stream.
Yeah.
Takes a You're good to go.
Okay, welcome everyone. We'll be getting started here shortly.
Okay. My screen says this meeting is being recorded. And do we hit continue or?
Yeah, sure. You can hit that if it's a pop-up.
Yeah. There we go. Good.
All right, Gary, are you ready?
Yeah, we're ready. Yes.
All right, let's get started.
Okay, Sharon.
Good
Madam
evening, ladies
President.
and gentlemen, and welcome to the Book Club of California's virtual book launch for a descriptive bibliography of books and pamphlets covering the years 1896 to 1905 by Gary F. Kurutz. My name is Sharon G., and I'm president of the board of directors for the Book Club of California. For those of you who are new to us, the Book Club of California is a nonprofit, member and donor-supported organization dedicated to preserving and promoting the history of the book and the book arts, oftentimes with a focus on the literature and history of California and the West. As you will hear tonight, the book club publishes finely made limited edition books. We also produce a scholarly journal and keepsakes for our members. And we host a year-round series of exhibitions and programs like the one this evening on topics including fine printing, design, typography, bookbinding, collecting, and more. If you are interested in what we do, please consider joining our century-long tradition. If you are not a member, or if your membership has lapsed, I strongly encourage you to consider membership. Dues are modest and the benefits are many, and we cannot do the work we do without the support of our members and contributors. I also encourage you to visit our website at bccbooks.org. Now for tonight's program. I am pleased to announce, on behalf of the Book Club of California, the publication of our 241st book, a monumental reference work titled The Klondike and Alaska Gold Rushes, a descriptive bibliography of books and pamphlets covering the years 1896 to 1905. Gary F. Kurutz, the author of the highly acclaimed The California Gold Rush, a descriptive bibliography, which was published by the Book Club in 1997, has produced this essential reference work as a companion to his impressive earlier tome. And we are delighted he again worked with us to produce another incredible piece of scholarship. The Klondike and the Alaska Gold Rushes, covering the years 1896 to 1905, are considered the last of the great gold stampedes, driven by individuals when much of the economically depressed world was feverish to head to the remote wilderness of Canada's Yukon Territory and the Seward Peninsula of Alaska. It is befitting that the Book Club of California is the publisher of the Klondike and Alaska Gold Rushes bibliography, as many of the gold seekers came from the Golden State, and San Francisco ranked as one of the primary outfitting and jumping off points to this new land of mineral wealth. The book consists of detailed descriptions of 650 titles and additional 279 editions and issues. References to appropriate bibliographies, works of reference, and antiquarian booksellers' catalogs are given along with library locations. A summary of each title includes important information on its publishing history, as well as narrating the stampeders' experiences in the far north. The summaries alone provide the reader with a sense of the extraordinary challenges endured by the men and women who braved this remote land in search of riches when much of America was mired in an economic depression brought about by the Panic of 1893. Sprinkled throughout the summaries are colorful quotes by the participants, demonstrating their extraordinary eloquence and their awareness of witnessing a time of historical importance. Tonight, Gary will talk a little bit about his bibliography, and I'm sure he'll share information about his research and perhaps whet your appetite for acquiring this important and handsomely designed publication. And now it's my very great pleasure to introduce the author scholar, past president of the book club, and recipient of its prestigious Oscar Lewis Award for Western History. Gary F. Kurutz.
Thank you, Sharon. You're very generous and most kind. Appreciate it. And I'm most grateful to the Book Club of California for publishing this book on the Klondike and Alaska gold rushes. It's a nice companion to the California Gold Rush bibliography. And what I thought I would do is I received a nice box of the books today. And it just is a beautiful, beautiful work that Bradley Hutchinson printed and designed, and all the way in Texas, but it made it over. And it just is so handsome and beautifully designed. And also Molly Dedman designed I understand, the title page and the cover. So she's a very skilled lady too. So anyhow, this has been a lot of fun working on. And years and years ago, a bookseller friend of mine used to work for Holmes Book Company, Bob Holly, after I did the California Gold Rush, said, we should do one on the Klondike. And that always kind of sat with me. I said, that might be a good project. But, I had other things in the work. Like I had a full-time job that, required 60, 70 hours a week of work. And so anyhow, but that always sat with me, and then decided, okay, let's go ahead and do this. And there are several people that helped me out too. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Kevin Kosick, the wonderful director of the book club, but also people like John Windle, who's in England right now. He was so encouraging along the way. And a friend of mine that I got to know up through the California Rare Book School, Claudia Skelton, who lives in the Seattle area. And she was also very encouraging. And she said, you must come up to the British Columbia and to the archives there in Victoria, and also come up into Alaska. So she was very, very encouraging, as well as, of course, places like the Seattle Public Library and the University of Washington. She is not only a member of the Book Club of California, but very active with the Book Club of California. So I'm sorry, the Book Club of Washington. Yeah, I'm sorry. But also, I'd say my wife, Katie, you want to come over here? And she was been so encouraging and helpful. And, when you do descriptive bibliographies, there's a lot of challenges and sometimes some vexatious moments too. And, she was always been a great cheerleader, and I'm just ever so grateful to her for her support in getting this produced. And so anyhow, I just, can't not thank Katie enough. And she's a scholar in her own right. And actually we're in her office area, and she's dedicated, she's done a lot of work on Beatrix Potter. We have a wonderful collection behind us of Beatrix Potter. But she's also working on a book on E.B. Crocker that is coming along very, very well. So anyhow, this has just been an exciting adventure going up to all of these places. Also wanted to commemorate or thank and recognize the late W. Michael Mathis. When I first told him about this idea, he was very enthusiastic about it. He has been a Book Club of California author, but he also is a noted historian of Mexico. But he's been to Alaska before, and he is very excited. And he just got a brand new pickup truck. This is a few years back ago. And so he said, we're going to drive up there. So we drove all the way from, he did from Texas all the way to pick me up in Sacramento. And then we headed north and went through and again to Seattle, and then over into Vancouver and all throughout that area. And then took a ferry down to Victoria. And it just was, he was so generous in providing transportation, and he just loved being on the trip, and we had a great time together. So he's again a very skilled bibliographer in his own right, so he has been very helpful all along the way. So I just wanted to thank him, and again, I mentioned Claudia Skelton up in Seattle. She was so helpful. And I'd like to thank too Lisa Murrieta, the book club copy editor, for correcting my typos and that sort of thing. And also Rebecca Legates, the book club's production manager. So anyhow, this has just been a great experience, and also working with private collectors like Ken Harrison too, over in Mill Valley, and never forget going with him to his security place, and he got out his key and opened up a wonderful vault. It was just loaded with great Klondike materials too. So it just, so many private collectors have been helpful too. Klaus Werner, also in Marin County, had an incredible collection. And again, he had a big vault like a bank, and it was loaded with great Klondike materials as well as California Gold Rush materials. So it has been very rewarding and exciting and educational to work with all these wonderful collectors, both privately and also institutionally. And just, such a delight to go to, a place like Victoria, where they have the Royal Provincial Museum and library there. And it's such a beautiful city. But the University of Washington, of course, up in the Seattle area, is so gorgeous, and they have such a wonderful collection. But also found out too that, usual places I expected to have things in California, like the Huntington Library, they were very, very helpful. But also the UC San Diego had the Richard Lingenfelter collection, and he specialized in broad mining history, but he also had a lovely collection of Klondike and Alaska Gold Rush material. So in La Jolla is a nice place to visit. That library there is so beautiful. So, and of course, knew that we wanted to go to places too, like the Newberry Library in Chicago. And, you find in so many of these books little variations, different styles of bindings, maybe even different colors of the binding. So, you can never run down everything, but you do the best you can. And places too, like Dartmouth College has a fabulous collection. T.W. Streeter has a wonderful collection there, the great book collector. And some of you are probably familiar with the Streeter catalog. So that was so nice to see that in person. It just was such a lovely experience to go into these great libraries and being able to be a researcher. I've been a librarian for close to 40 years. So it's nice to be on the other side of the counter, as it were. So anyhow, that was some of my experiences, but I also love the literature of the Gold Rush too. And people so often ask me, are you going to include photographs and manuscripts? And, I just very gently reply that, I don't have enough lifetimes to include all of that. So I stuck to printed material, books and pamphlets. And as has all these hundreds and hundreds of titles. So that was enough of a challenge to track them all down and read through them and summarize them as best as possible. So just love the literature too. The Klondike, of course, Jack London is perhaps the most famous author associated with the Klondike, with White Fang and the Call of the Wild, but I did not include fiction just because so much work had already been done on people like Jack London and Robert Service and others. So anyhow, it just been such a wonderful adventure, and the Book Club of California just has been so generous and helpful in getting this produced and to have it as a companion to my California Gold Rush bibliography. So and again, there were so many interesting eyewitness accounts with so many articulate people, but I also like to point out that the man who allegedly, people will always debate this, discovered gold on the Klondike was a man by George Washington Carmack, and he came from Port Costa, California, a Bay Area person. So it just is nice that he was the one that saw something shining in the ditch in the Klondike and it just on Yukon River. And it just is nice to see the local connections. Again, San Francisco, as pointed out by Sharon, was such a big jumping off point to the great north and all these cities up in the Klondike, and also when gold was discovered in Nome, Alaska. Again, San Francisco was one of the leading port cities, along with Seattle, to make it to the far north. And of course, you read about all these people, how do you prepare for this and what kind of equipment to take? Again, people knew that Alaska and the Yukon does get cold during the wintertime, but realistically, what were they going to do? So they all, learned that they got to carry heavy fur along. And some people even said if your eyelashes freeze, you just got to, go into a warm place. And hopefully, too, some people's beards actually froze. And so they had all kinds of little challenges that they wouldn't have thought of living in, say, Philadelphia or in Los Angeles. So it just is exciting to see all of these accounts, and people wrote so wonderfully well too. Again, I'm always envious of the literary capacities of some of these people, and I liked William Haskell's great work on the Klondike, and also another man by the name of Tappan Edney's book, The Klondike Stampede. These are just wonderful accounts, eyewitness accounts, and it just is. They're not necessarily diaries. Some of them were reminiscences, but they added, so nice the beautiful, rich literature of Western gold rushes, starting with the California one, and of course ending with the Klondike and Alaska gold rushes, and from 1896 up to 1905. Of course, people are still looking for gold up there. You do see television programs about Alaska gold and the Klondike, and people up there now with big equipment, sluicing operations, and that sort of thing. So it just has been a wonderful education for me, being a native Californian, to learn more about places in the far north, and again, California's played such a key role in developing some of these early gold mines. So anyhow, that's kind of the long and the short of it. So,
well, thank you, Gary. That was really interesting. I just have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
Okay. So I think you mentioned that, or you mentioned beforehand, that it took you over 10 years to research this book.
Yes.
That was longer than the period that you were trying to research, it seems. Was there ever a point that you got distracted during the 10 years, or wished you hadn't taken on this? This was much larger than you thought it was going to be?
Yeah. Well, sometimes too, we had a full-time job too, and that was a good distraction. Also working from time to time with the book club too, at the publications committee and what have you. So, but those are all so rewarding. And to me, again, it was just like such an adventure. So but what maybe the best pictorial analogy I can think of, there's a wonderful photograph that shows a long line of gold seekers going up over Chilkoot Pass. They're covered in snow, and it looks like a line of ants, but it just shows you the determination of these people. And actually, they found it easier to go in up over these steep areas in the wintertime because they could cut stairs into the ice and snow. And whereas during the summer months, you have the Alaska state bird, the mosquito, and that ravaged a lot of people and distracted them, and other sorts of things that happened. But also to help with a medicinal effect, they developed a little supplement called Chino or Hooch, and it was a beverage, an alcoholic beverage that a lot of the Klondikers took up too, to ease some of the pain if getting there, and also the hard work of mining, and particularly working in these icy streams. Even in the summertime, a place like the Yukon River is a very, very, or Klondike River, they're both very, very cold. And so, making do with that. And also too, I got interested in, some of the women that went up there too, that not only to work with husbands or mates, what have you, but also they enjoyed mining for gold. And I've seen several photographs of women actually with gold pans and that sort of thing. They had their full Victorian dresses on. And but nonetheless, they're out there looking for gold too. And they wrote, one of my favorite is May Kellogg Sullivan's account. She was a beautiful writer and, great articulate account of working up there in the Klondike and Alaska gold rushes. So just the literature is so rich. So,
Was there anything unexpected or unusual that you discovered that you didn't know before about the gold rush?
Just actually, I'll have to admit right away, I did not realize that George Washington Carmack was a native of California. So that was a very nice connection there. So and also, there's a library I went into in Whitehorse, in the Yukon Territory. And in order to get into the library, you had to take off your shoes. So that was an interesting thing. Most libraries say, please take off your coat or put your briefcase in a locker, that sort of thing. But take off your shoes, that was a new one for me. So, but again, all the librarians I worked with were always so helpful. And, we kept in touch. And via email, I think benefits so greatly by the technology that we have now too, and being able to go to, national or international databases like OCLC to see where some of these things were located. And that's what led me to go to places like Dartmouth. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have gone. I felt like, I needed to go up to the Yukon, Alaska, but places in the Eastern United States, of course, I knew of the well-known Western Americana collection there at the Bianchi Library. So, that was always on the list, and went to the Library of Congress. So it's always so fulfilling to going to these great libraries and talking to the librarians there. So and also going to book fairs too, and looking for Klondike materials too. Can hardly resist. And so got several boxes at home and in a storage locker too on the Klondike. So that one of these days we'll lighten the load here at the house.
So I was just wondering, you mentioned that there were women that were involved in the gold rush. How did this affect, or were they involved, the native population of Alaska and the Yukon?
Oh, yes. I mean, they're, the Native Indians up there, of course, or First Americans. First Nations, yes, were involved, but same with their menfolk too. But also in the discovery. Yeah, and they're along there at the time of the discovery too. So that so they played a very important role. But and I think people, well, compared to say the California Gold Rush, were more respectful of the native peoples in these areas too. So just the benefit of 50 years of education, as it were. So so it just is. Those are, some very nice experiences. And of course, the Pacific Northwest is loaded with so much wonderful Native American art. And it just is so, uplifting to see all of that as well. And going into the various museums in these cities, not only look at books and pamphlets, but to see the wonderful artifacts and artwork there too. So, and seeing some of the, canoes and what have you that were so beautifully decorated, and totem poles and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Were there any other women?
Very interesting. So I understand there's an interesting tale about Soapy Smith.
Oh, yes. Yeah. He was the, how would I say, the great four-flusher of the Klondike. And he was in Skagway. And he had this idea, and the reason why he's called Soapy Smith, he came up with this idea that he would sell bars of soap, but he spread a false rumor that these bars of soap every now and then would include either gold or currency inside the soap bar. And so he, fooled hundreds and hundreds of people up there and buying, his soap bars and spending a lot of money on that. So and he also had a saloon there in Skagway. And But like all of these guys that were taking advantage of people, frauding them and stealing from them. And, he had a coterie of helpers too, but he crossed one guy by the name of Franklin Reed, and he was challenged to a duel. And so both Soapy and Frank Reed got together and had a duel. And Soapy got shot and killed, but he also fired off enough to eventually kill Frank Reed, not right away, but anyhow, that put an end to Soapy Smith. But he was the great four-flusher, if you will, of the Klondike gold rush. So he's probably the most notorious guy. And if you go up to Skagway, you see a replica, while it's been restored, of his Soapy Smith saloon there. And you can, of course, commercially, people do sell bars of soap with his name on it, that sort of thing. So, but thank you for bringing up Soapy. Yes, he was a colorful character there. So
yes, he sounds very interesting.
Yes,
Were there any other interesting characters that you came across?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and just, I like to think of William Tappan Edney, his experiences in traveling and, taking your life in your hands too, by, climbing over Chilcut Pass and, coming down into the Yukon River and trying to get gold out. But again, some of these ladies up there, like I mentioned, that May Kellogg Sullivan, she, was really, there are a lot of dance hall queens up there, of course, and they made a lot of money in a variety of ways. And they added a lot of how would I say levity to these guys that were traveling thousands of miles from home. And so,
how about the woman who went up to look for her son, and she?
Oh gosh.
And she, well,
I'm sorry, his
you
name
don't have
just.
to remember her name, but
Yeah.
this example. Of
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's a woman who went up to the Klondike and to look for her son, and eventually she ended up staying there. Yeah, I forgot about her. Yeah, she became a seamstress, and again, there's that old expression: those who mind the miners were the ones that made the money, and and so actually the amount of commercial profits made by the Klondike versus the amount of gold is probably 6 to 1. And, so let's say $6,000 for every $600 worth of gold that was gotten out. So, and then just, people then carrying back home and to San Francisco, coming off in a wharf inside, the Embarcadero there with bags loaded with Klondike gold. So that would get the whole city very, very excited. So and just again, so many of these interesting accounts. Of course, there are people up there too that froze to death too. They didn't know how to handle, the minus 56 degrees, that sort of thing. And, of course, there are some people that were rather ingenious in getting around. There was one guy that actually rode a bicycle along the frozen Yukon River. And there was another guy that skated along the Yukon River to get to his destination. So there are, interesting forms of transportation, not only boats and canoes and what have you, but like I say, a bicycle rider going up the frozen Yukon River. So there are a lot of little stories of that nature. So so anyhow, and I could go on and on, but I'm giving a talk later on at the book club too.
Yes,
so.
we will have, when we can open up again, we will have you come and share more stories with us and more of your findings. I was just, my ignorance didn't realize that San Francisco was so involved in not just the California gold rush, but also the Klondike in Alaska played a pivotal role.
Right.
So
yeah. That
really
was
interesting.
The jumping off place. So, some people, of course, tried, from New York City going across Canada, but that was very, very difficult. So, when the seasons changed and they, got stuck. So the easiest way was to, come around Cape Horn or go across the isthmus to San Francisco, then up. And of course, there were a lot of Californians who knew something about mining gold too.
Yes.
That went up there. So it was that was San Francisco was the principal place. It really was. So that's
really interesting.
People like Jack London were from this area. So
yes.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So that's been the sort of last 10 years of your life. What are you going to do for your future? What do you have on the drawing board now?
Organize my home library. I also work for an organization called California State Library Foundation, and we do what we call a bulletin. It's a 3 or 4 times a year journal, and so I often write articles for that. And I gave a talk at the Roxburgh Club on Woodward's Gardens, and so things like that keep me off the streets at night. So
well, I'm sure if you come up with an idea for a next book,
it
would probably be something the book club would be very interested in partnering with you.
No, actually, what I'd like to do, Sharon, is go through my bibliography and say, gee, there hasn't been a modern edition of this published, and maybe recommend something like that, writing a good introduction or foreword, that sort of thing, and supporting the actual text from the turn of last century. So so it's
very, very nice.
And I just so wish it could be there in San Francisco, but it's such a strange time with the pandemic and everything else.
Well, and yes, yes, and this is California. We don't really quite know what to do with the rain. Certainly not in the amount that it was coming down.
Yeah. Okay,
so
Sharon.
We will have to look forward to your next appearance at the book club, which you will, I'm sure,
be there in person. So
yes. Well, we will expect you to be there in person.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for giving us a little preview of your book. The book is currently on sale and can be found on the book club's website at bccbooks.org/bcc publications. And it is beautifully designed and printed by Bradley Hutchison at his workshop. There it is. The magic of Zoom. That's what it looks like. It is beautiful. It is and if you have the California Gold Rush, it is a beautiful companion volume.
California one,
and I like it because the California one is blue and the Klondike one is gold.
Yeah, right there. There we go.
Blue and gold. Absolutely. The colors of my wedding. Anyway.
Oh, okay. How
more than you wanted to know about me. But it is designed and printed by Bradley Hutchison at his letterpress workshop in Austin, Texas. It's published in a limited edition of 500 copies, and it's priced at $285. There is a deluxe edition of 25 copies, very exclusive, and that's priced at $725. And so for all of you who are here listening to us on YouTube, if you want to acquire this publication, please go to our website and you can buy it there. Let's see, I think it was also mentioned that you and Kevin Kosick, our executive director, will be at the Sacramento Book Fair. So if you want to purchase a copy and pick it up there, that can be arranged. Please call Kevin at the book club. The number's 415-781-7532, or you can email him at kevin@bccbooks.org.
Yeah, I'll be aggressive in promoting the book.
I don't know how aggressive you need to be. It's a wonderful volume, and it's something that people should have if you're interested in the Klondike and the Alaska gold rushes. So thank you again, Gary, and thank you.
You've been so gracious, Sharon. You really are terrific. So
we can still kind of see you. Yes. And we look forward to seeing both of you in person at an upcoming talk, and we look forward to seeing all of you in person or through our online community in the near future. Thank you so much and have a good
Thank
evening.
you, and have a good evening.